Psalm 139, verses 13 through 18. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! I try to count them, but they are more than the sand. I come to the end, and I am still with you. There ends the reading.
Right now, in this very moment, as we look around this sanctuary, it's probably all very familiar to us. The walls look sturdy. The bricks have been here a long time. They haven't moved or fallen out. The floor feels pretty stable. And the pews are always as they always are. You just don't want to sit in them too long. The same as last week. And this morning we are participating in an expected style of worship. There's no surprises here this morning. Every once in a while we try to change it up, but this morning's pretty same as usual, but not. And for a moment, perhaps life feels pretty established. And yet all around us right now, changes are happening. Barely perceptible, but they are happening. And of course, if we were to take a little walk outside, we might see the cracks in the asphalt in the parking lot. A lot that was once shiny and black with freshly painted lines. And as we continue our tour, we might notice some faded paint, some rusted spots. Trustees are always wringing our hands about how much work we have to do on the building. And we might notice that there's a brand new fence. A neighbor, what we used to have was kind of a fence that was kind of a chain link fence that was all kind of falling apart. The neighbor said, "Hey, do you mind if I take that fence away and put up a new fence?" We're grateful for that. We have a new fence for part of that side of the parking lot. In our bodies, right now, there are subtle changes in our breathing and our heart rate variability. And we probably don't see the changes in our face and our body from last week. But if we look at a picture from 5 or 10 years ago, and then we notice the difference. With young children, it's easy to see the growth and the shifting, even week by week, especially with babies. The point is that everything in life, in creation, is always undergoing some sort of shifting, changing, moving, aging, remolding, reforming over and over in these cycles and cycles and cycles that go on and on and on. Most of us probably don't spend time paying attention to how we are being formed right now, or who we are becoming, but we are becoming. David has connected our computer to our large screen TV. And sometimes he'll put on a slideshow. So they're just running in the background. We have thousands of pictures, probably over 3 decades. And they're separated into various categories. Sometimes it's travel, or maybe it's holidays, or various things. And it's interesting and sometimes eye-opening to see all the changes. Bodies, faces, clothes. Sometimes we see reminders of a particularly challenging period of time. And we might think, wow, how did we ever get through that? When I look at old pictures, it makes me aware of how habits of eating, exercising, or lack of it catch up with us. But our lifetime scale is minuscule compared to the eras and ages of human history. I'm just talking human history now. Right now we're in the modern era, although some people call it the contemporary era, which is considered the time frame beginning 1800. And I suppose if humans are still around in 1,000 years, this era will be renamed the techno-something, or the cloud era, who knows? We could have a fun thought experiment with that. What would we be called in 1,000 years? But before the modern era, there was the pre-modern era, the medieval era, the classical era, the Iron Age, and on and on and on. The Stone Age was 3.3 million to 5,000 years ago. But then, beyond humans, the Earth has a vast geological time frame. According to Wikipedia, the Earth formed about 4.54 billion years ago. And it was as a disc-shaped mass of dust and gas left over from the formation of the sun, which also created the rest of the solar system. And initially, the Earth was molten due to extreme volcanism and frequent collisions with other bodies. But eventually, the outer layer of the planet cooled to form a solid crust when water began accumulating in the atmosphere. And through all of this change and formation, all of this, there was constant change, formation, transformation, going on and on. Caves are interesting. I've always been fascinated with caves. The most common cave formation is simple. It develops with basic elements of rain, soil, rock, and plant life. The groundwater produced by rain moves through the soil and plant life. The water mixes with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and creates a solution of carbonic acid. This acid is formed either by water coming in contact with the rocks containing sulfide minerals, or by bacteria from the groundwater, which breaks down the rock. The water eventually makes its way through fissures in the earth. And over eons and eons, small cracks widen the larger cavities into larger cavities. And these cavities may then widen into larger rooms or caves. And again, this goes on and on and on. This time last year, I was in Yellowstone. And one of the things I loved about being in Yellowstone is that you can witness geological activity as it is happening. Everything's so close to the surface. And we see formation, reformation, transformation, and it's happening all the time. And it goes all the way back. And don't worry, I won't bother you with the rest of the universe and creation. We'll move on. The point is, you can see where it goes on and on. And in the book of Genesis, our ancient storytellers had an intuitive and experiential sense of God the Creator. Genesis says, "In the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. But then God begins forming creation, and a differentiation in creation begins. You could put a label of evolution on this if you want. Light and dark, sky and water, land and vegetation, creatures, and finally human beings. And it's really interesting that the order really follows the order of how we understand today creation evolved and unfolded. But however you understand God, there's a sense that we too are intricately connected to God. We cannot be formed by God without also being radically connected to this ongoing creative unfolding that is going on everywhere all the time. This is one of the insights in the psalm that David read for us. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. And the words, my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Now, the ancients did not have geological and biological knowledge that we have today, but they had an intuitive grasp of their dependency upon this vast mystery and source of life. They were immersed and interacting with the elements of nature and creation, hour by hour. And Psalm 139, the part that David didn't read, says, if I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. God was everywhere. Now, I understand you might wonder where I'm going with all this. So here's the point. The God that called forth creation, that formed and reformed the world, calls us too, and is forming us right now, and calls us to be formed and reformed. Now, Isaiah pictures God as a potter. It's a lovely, you could read that scripture out there, and it's in your bulletin. And he says, yet, O Lord, you are our creator. We are the clay, and you are our potter. We are all the work of your hand. Could it be that in nature and in our own lives, there is intentionality, purposiveness? Is it possible that there is something more than random chance and natural selection? And perhaps that God is within us too. Part of our own becoming, growing, changing, even dying, and part of what is preserved. The question for us, perhaps this Sunday, for us to consider is, what does it mean to be formed by God? And how do we relate more intentionally with God's claim on our life? Marianne Robinson is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. She wrote a book called Gilead, and she has a newer book out where she's basically rereading Genesis, but interpreting it as she goes along. It's fabulous. But she says this, and she's deeply Christian, grew up in a Christian household, still attends church. She says, my tradition, meaning the Christian tradition, would say basically, this is in its classic forms, that every experience, every moment is a question being posed to you by God. What is wanted out of this moment? What does God want of you in this moment? And the question is not, what is your particular interest in a particular situation, but what is God's interest? It's a different way to kind of perceive things. What does God want out of you? How does God want to mold you, shape you? What is being required of you? Another way to put it is, how is God molding you? Are you paying attention to God's hands on your life, in your life, inside your own psyche? You know, we have this experience. We are in these bodies, but we have a psychology, and that's how we perceive things. And when we drill back to the eons of geological and human history, we can see that there is this evolution and formation going on, but it's not just out in the world. It's in us. And what I think we can forget is that God is not just visible in the outer processes of the world, but is truly inside us, molding us, shaping us. In Jungian psychology, there is a concept that there is the God within. Now, Carl Jung called it the self with a capital S, not the little s, which is what we are. And I won't go too far into it, but the God within is considered a central guiding force in our development. Carl Jung saw this energy expressed in our ability to form and evolve, while also maintaining our own unique selves. He saw it as the blueprint of our potential unfolding and the path to greater unity of the conscious and unconscious. And Jung saw it perpetually reorienting us toward balance and guiding us toward greater wholeness. This is inside of us. There's always this working, trying to get us toward balance, consciousness, clarity, tuning in to this guiding force. And I like this term. This could be understood as a kind of inner companion that can provide guidance and support. Do you ever think about the fact that you actually have an inner companion beyond you that's there to help you and guide you? As we pay attention to God, this force is responsive. Alfred North Whitehead said, God is in the universe or nowhere, continually creating in us and around us. This creative principle is everywhere, in inanimate and so-called inanimate matter, in the ether, water, earth, and human hearts. But he says this creation is a continuing process, since no sooner do you arrive than you start afresh on the journey. Isn't that true? And he says, as far as we partake of this creative process, we partake of the divine. So this Sunday, take solace that God is within you, molding you, that you can relate to it. This is a relatable process. It doesn't have to just be out there 1,000,000 years ago, 1,000,000,000 years ago, but it's happening right now inside you. And it doesn't matter how old or young or rich or poor, what race you are, what size you are. It's happening. The psalmist knew it. The prophets knew it. Even a few scientists know it now. How about you? And perhaps as you go into the week, think about and tune into how God might be shaping and forming you in this very moment. And see where you might go, knowing that God is with you always. Amen.